morning. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our guest speaker today. Not only is he a Kingswood graduate of the class of 1992, but also the director of a documentary that hits home here in Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, Jim, the James Foley Story. His first solo feature world premiered in the Sundance U.S. documentary competition and not only won the Audience Award, but also opened the eyes of millions across the country to the importance of conflict journalism and global citizenship. He told the story about the life, death, and legacy of journalist and childhood friend James Foley. Please join me in welcoming Brian Oakes.
All right. This microphone better not go out on me. Hello, Kingswood, class of 2016. Give them a round of applause. Come on. Thank you, guys. Thanks for inviting me here today. This is really amazing. It's pretty surreal, a little nerve-wracking, but it's a real honor to be here and speak with you guys today. You know, coming back home to Wolfeboro, I just take comfort in the fact that, you know, nothing has changed. The lake, you know, the lake is still there. It's great. Cape Park, Cary Beach, Abenaki, Hatch Theater. No? You guys have blank looks on your face. You don't know Hatch Theater? Well, let me tell you about Hatch Theater. It was the place to be. And parents, you know what I'm talking about. It was right next to the train station. But the thing about Hatch Theater is it would have the same movie play for like 5 months. I saw Karate Kid like 87 times. White Knights, The Twilight Zone, no, none of these movies ring a bell. Back to the Future Part 2. Yeah. Back to the Future Part 2. Marty McFly goes 30 years into the future to 2015. There were flat screen TVs and 3D holograms, self-tying shoelaces. This is me watching this in '86 blew my mind. But here we are today, and it's the future. All right, so Hatch Theater was a little bit before your time. That's fine. I'm old. That's cool. Now you have some fancy schmancy yogurt shop downtown. Jimmy Fallon is your next door neighbor. Whatever, that's fine. I love this town. I love going to Kingswood, and you know, we have this in common, you and me. This is where I grew up. This is where I learned to swim, where I learned to ski. I had my summer jobs. I mowed lawns and painted houses. I pumped gas down at the docks. This is where I drank my first beer. It was a Busch Light in the forest or Sewell Road woods. When I graduated from Kingswood, it was 1992, and I was sitting where you guys are right now, 24 years ago. And when I was 18, which means you guys were 0. But look at you now. You're zeros to heroes. So the word hero, actually, it's my segue. This is a word that holds a lot of weight. And it's a word I want to talk to you about today. But before I do that, I want to talk about something else. And who was it? Emma, I think. I heard her mention stories. And that's what I want to talk about. It was about storytelling. And as a graphic designer and animator and a film director, you know, telling stories is a big part of my life. And each of you have your own story. And you're living in and you're creating it right now. And today is the end of one of your chapters, but it's also the beginning of a new one. And every chapter will be unique to you. The genre of your story might be a drama, a comedy, maybe an action-adventure flick, science fiction, maybe some romance. You're all going to meet different characters throughout your story, and all of you will encounter different obstacles along the way that you'll have to overcome. And each of you, of course, will have your own ending as well. And when those end credits roll, whose names will appear. But I've always been a visual person. I don't know why. I guess it's just the way my brain is wired. In first grade, when I was in Carpenter Elementary School, my teacher was Mrs. Erickson. And she cast me in the class play as one of the lead characters. And I was like, no, I refused. I wasn't going to get up there in front of performing in front of people. And I begged her. I said, please, just let me do props, design the set, please. And she relented, so that was nice. But I always loved to draw, and I looked forward to my art classes at Kingswood. In math, I liked geometry because it was just circles and squares and triangles. I could deal with that. But things really started to click for me at Kingswood when I signed up for technical drawing with Mr. Wilson. Yeah. I loved Mr. Wilson's class. It was conceive, design, and build a bridge out of balsa wood. See whose bridge would hold the most weight. You had to figure out a shape that could fit through a cross, a square, and a circle. And I designed a baseball stadium my senior year. It was amazing, and I loved it because it was a real game changer for me because it provided me this portfolio that allowed me to get accepted into Syracuse University's architecture school. And that's kind of where it all began for me. So I kind of want to do, that said, I want to do this visualization with you. And to help me with this, I want to ask Glenn, AKA Mr. Wilson, to come up here. Come on, hustle, hustle. And I'm also going to need one of you guys. Are there any future architects in the? Yeah? All right, come up here, brother. So as these guys come up here, I have a very special item to me. This is back to storytelling, and I want Mr. Wilson here. All right. All right, Colin, you're going to go architecture school? Whereabouts? Wentworth. All right, let's hear it for Colin. All right, so back to storytelling. So I have this really special item with me, and I'm gonna give one end here to Colin, and I'm gonna give the other end here to Mr. Wilson. So maybe go right down there, and you hold, that's good. You hold that, just hold that, and we'll just All right, so this is it. It's amazing, right? It's a clothesline. But what does this represent? Well, yes, from this day forward, you are in charge of doing your own laundry. Sorry, it sucks, but that's what you're going to be doing. Now, what this clothesline represents is a timeline. And it's the timeline of your life. This is your story. And I've got 3 things in my hand. They're clothespins. But these are also moments. And for this visualization, your story is a series of moments which will define your life. Some of these moments you're going to dictate because they're created by the decisions that you make on your own. And some of these moments, will completely be out of your control and you'll have no say in it whatsoever. Now, these 3 particular moments are ones that all of you and we have in common. And the first one, which is probably the most important moment of your life, this is the day you were born. And I want you to take a moment and think about the fact that you exist. It's crazy. And why is it crazy? Well, I don't know if sex ed is taught the same way it was 25 years ago, but I'm just going to assume that the whole process is the same. But think about the chances your parents had to meet, their parents had to meet, their parents had to meet, and so on and so on and so forth. You go back and back and back. And not only that, but all the circumstances that came together that had to fall into place. So what I'm trying to say is, we're lucky. We're lucky to be here. And we didn't have a chance in this matter, but we're here, and that in itself is a really incredible circumstance. So this clothespin represents our birth, and it's going to go right at the beginning. The second clothespin here, for me it was 24 years ago. For you, it's today. This moment in time, this is your graduation. It's going to go here. And this third one, come on, Mike. There we go. This third one, this is the day that we die. Let's just put this way down the line as far as possible, okay? We'll go close to Mr. Wilson over here. Now, as you live your life, moments are going to occur, okay? And in turn, your character is going to be defined. And this is your journey. Your first kiss behind Hatch Theater. Your first beer. The day you realized you weren't going to play second base for the Red Sox. College graduation, your first job, your first unemployment check, your wedding day, your day your son is born, the day you realize your life is being sucked away into a vortex of hell and you delete your Facebook account, the day you reactivate your Facebook account. It's a very good time in between these two, I'm telling you. The day your daughter is born, and so on and so forth. So, as you make these moments, you plug them onto your timeline. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, architecture student. You guys can go sit down. Let's give him a round of applause. So I want you to visualize your life as this timeline of events and of moments, but also recognize that these moments are simply exposition. And what I mean by that is these clothespins are just points in time created by the results of the decisions that you make or circumstances that occur. And in order to understand the texture of someone, to define our being, or in storytelling lingo, see the arc of a character, you need to explore how these characters arrive at all these different moments and figure out what the impact it has on them as they continue on in their journey. Why did this happen? How did you choose to get to this place? What was your reasoning behind it? When you start exploring these types of questions about yourself, that's when you start to define yourself, and that's when you find out what kind of character you are. Now, I want to return to the word hero. In narrative storytelling, there is a pattern which is called the hero's journey. It was identified by the American scholar Joseph Campbell, and in drama, film, myth, even religious ritual, it describes the adventure of an archetype known as the hero, who goes on to achieve great deeds on behalf of the group, tribe, or civilization. The hero's journey is used as a powerful storytelling structure for many of your beloved films, at least many of mine. And I want to kind of break the hero's journey down for you. You first meet the hero in his or her mundane and ordinary world. Luke Skywalker, the bored farm boy on planet Tatooine. Or Shrek, living in his swamp, just wanting to be left alone. Next is a call to action where the hero is presented with a problem or an adventure. Harry Potter reads a letter telling him that he is a wizard and being invited to Hogwarts. First there is refusal and the hero balks at the idea, but then they are encouraged by a mentor. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi giving Luke his father's lightsaber. Next comes the hero crossing the threshold as they enter into this new world. The rocket blasting off, Dorothy going onto the yellow brick road. The hero is now committed, and there's no turning back. The hero is now forced to make allies and recognize their enemies as they encounter tests along the way. Luke Skywalker befriends Han Solo and makes an enemy in Jabba the Hutt. Shrek and Donkey, Iron Man, and Pepper Potts. Next in the pattern, the hero reaches a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. This is Theseus entering the labyrinth to fight the Minotaur. Sometimes the hero has to face this alone. After this comes the most critical moment in the hero's journey, where they survive a supreme ordeal. Bilbo Baggins survives the dragon, the battle with Smaug. E.T. seems to die on the operating table. We are encouraged to go to the brink of death with our hero, and sad when we think they might be dead, but revitalized when they return. Our hero now seizes the sword and takes possession of the treasure that they have been seeking. This might be a weapon, an elixir, or even knowledge. Luke discovers that Darth Vader is his father. Spoiler alert. But it's not over. Luke still must escape the Death Star. E.T. must escape on Elliot's bicycle. And this is the road back, and should be our most exciting chase scene. Our hero emerges a changed person and returns home to regular life, and only now discovers what was fully gained on their journey. Now, the hero's journey makes for great storytelling, and these films can make you cry, they can give you goosebumps, make you angry, and make you cheer. But this is fiction. Luke Skywalker, Dorothy, Iron Man, Spider-Man, these are heroes of Hollywood. So my question to you is, where can you find your hero in real life? Well, here's another one of my clothespins. And this moment in my story is August 9th, 2014. I was sitting in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, where I live. And I was with a friend, and I got a text message on my phone. And it said, "I'm sorry to hear about Jim." That Jim was James Foley. And if you don't know who James Foley is, well, I'll tell you, Jim and I were classmates here, like you guys, at Kingswood, and he was one of my best friends. He became a conflict journalist later in his life after going to Marquette University. And he covered wars in Afghanistan and Libya and ultimately Syria, where he was kidnapped by jihadist extremists and held for 2 years before being publicly executed by the group who we now know call themselves the Islamic State. This past year, I made a documentary film about my friend, and it's the reason you invited me here today. Jim was my hero. I didn't know it 24 years ago when we were sitting right where you guys are now. And the irony of the whole thing is that he never set out to be anyone's hero at all. Before he was a journalist, he was a teacher. He taught middle school in the low-income district in Phoenix. And when he left, he continued to mentor those students into their adult lives. Then he taught in the Chicago prison system, helping inmates get acclimated back into society. And while making the film, I found out that Jim would actually go back into the neighborhoods, the inner city of Chicago, to check up on these guys, make sure that they were doing all right. So I look at Jim's life, and I think about the hero's journey, and I start to kind of look at those two and compare. His call to adventure was journalism, and he crossed the threshold into war, where he made allies with American soldiers, fellow journalists, rebels in Libya, the citizens of Syria. His enemy was oppression. He was fighting to give a voice to the people who didn't have one. He fought with his pen, his video camera, and his words. Jim was actually first captured in Libya, where he spent 44 days held by the Gaddafi regime. He was held with Libyan political prisoners, but Jim survived this supreme ordeal. And he came home a changed man, armed with a new perspective on his work. Humbled and understanding that conflict journalism is not necessarily just running to the front lines, Jim would return to the region with this new perspective, working in Syria. but now focusing on the stories of the civilians behind the front lines. The Syrian Revolution was a much more dangerous and more complicated conflict than Libya, and Jim was kidnapped again. And as a hostage in a group of 19 men, I found out while making this film that he was a real leader among them, keeping everyone's spirits up in the darkest of days. And Jim's road back was not a physical journey. His return to home was actually in his death. And the discovery of what he gained in his journey was actually for us to learn. Jim's younger brother, John, says it best. He was trying to teach us. You need to look outside yourself. It's not about physical or monetary things. It's about how you act, who you teach, who you mentor, and who's going to remember you. Jim is not fiction. He really exists. So maybe there is something to learn from the hero's journey in real life. Now, in closing, I want to encourage you guys, as you move on, to find the heroes who will inspire you. Heroes that will help you find the humanity in people. Is it one of your teachers? Your parents? Maybe it could be the person sitting beside you right now. Remember that first clothespin, the day you were born, and how lucky you are to be here? You've got one clothesline. So I want you to use your time here as an opportunity to accomplish something great. It's now your turn to cross that threshold and begin your adventure. Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it. Congratulations again.